Hello, 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 and welcome back to HunterTuned. Today, me, Michael, and Christian are out here wrenching on some stuff. We actually broke the jack already this morning. What? You fixed it? Yeah, I know.
You should buy a new one.
I know.
They're on sale.
So we are working on this. What year car is this?
98.
98 Integra with a GSR engine. Was it originally a GSR car?
Yeah, it's
okay.
matching motor and train.
Okay, cool. So this is like a pretty much factory Integra GSR with just like a DC Sports header, a blocks intake manifold, and an AEM cold air intake. He's also got some other goodies on the car like a Mishimoto full-size radiator, and yeah, eBay mounts. It looks like he's got some new fuel filter stuff. He just good maintenance on this car. It looks like, man, it looks like he took good care of it. And yeah, we're gonna get a tune on this thing. He's been rolling around with a base map, and he wants to get a tune and make sure the engine is happy and the air fuels are going to be set right. And we're going to try to get some power out of this thing today. So we just had jacked the car up and put an O2 sensor in it and my wideband from my CRX. That is like my tuning wideband. It just plugs into the cigarette lighter. So as long as the cigarette lighter works on the car, we should be good to go. And then this thing is just on a chipped ECU, so we're going to be tuning it on Crome. Yeah, so without further ado, we already got the O2 sensor plugged into this thing. We have the wire running into the car just through the window here. And it's a beautiful day out here, so we finally been getting some nice weather here in Wisconsin finally. And yeah, we can actually work on shit outside with a t-shirt and not be freezing. So we are going to be plugging the wideband into the cigarette lighter and then plugging everything into the gauge, and then probably just zip tying it to something in the interior to monitor the air fuel ratio. And then we're going to take this thing out on the road because we actually have the dyno is still drying. We're going to let it dry for another hour or two before we put a car on it. But it is very nice and textured. This stuff actually is long. If this stuff actually holds up on the dyno, I feel like we will have zero traction issues because it has a lot of grit on the roller now, and it seems like it should do its job as long as, you know, it doesn't come off right away, which I feel like it might. But oh well, it'll be $20 wasted investment, I suppose, if it comes off. But yeah, looking good. All right, guys, so we got Reese's car pulled outside now with the wideband actually plugged in and working. So we got the wideband installed, and we are reading perfect 14.7 air fuel ratio at idle. It was a little bit lean when we first kind of got the car running, so we had to add a little bit of fuel into the idle. And yeah, so I pulled up, pretty much what I did is I just pulled up the chip that he already had. He already had a base map on this car, so I just took the chip out of the ECU, read the file, and we are just adjusting his current file that he had on here, and going from there. So this is just a base map off of eBay or something I think he has. So we are going to monitor the air fuel ratio. We have the ostrich plugged into the ECU. This ostrich cable actually allows me to real-time tune, so I can make adjustments while we're driving without having to pop the chip in and out. That's what this little ostrich cable is. A lot of people have asked me like how I tune Crome, and that is how you plug the ostrich in, and then you can do real-time adjustments to the map, and it does it in real time. So ECU does have a data logging header installed into it, but J12 is not removed. A lot of times if you're going to data log with Crome, you have to install the data logging header and remove J12 from the board on the ECU. But a lot of times the Crome stuff is kind of buggy with the data logging, at least without Chrome Gold, which this is not a Chrome Gold map. It's just an all-motor setup. I don't think we're really going to have to monitor a whole lot of stuff. So air fuel is the main important thing that we're going to be watching today. We also just got a timing light on the engine. We jumped the little data link connector down here in the passenger footwell, and we got the timing set. This was actually already set. Reese did a good job with setting the distributor already, so the timing is perfect. And we checked the oil, made sure it has oil in it, and this thing's ready to go. Should be a lot of fun. All right, guys, so we just been playing with Reese's car here. We switched it over to a Chrome Gold map because the base map that he did have, the cool thing about Chrome Gold is it can actually allow VTEC to enable under a throttle percentage instead of just enable at an RPM. So he was actually kind of complaining about the base map beforehand. When the VTEC was set lower, the car would kind of hit VTEC on the highway just cruising. So on Chrome we can actually adjust the VTEC to enable above. Currently it's at 35%, so anything below 35%, say if he's just cruising down the highway, it's going to not hit VTEC until he steps on it. So that'll kind of keep the fuel mileage better for him, and everything happy there. So we got everything tuned up pretty good. We got the air fuels dialed in a little bit leaner cruising to help him get a little bit better fuel mileage, and wide opens between 12.5 and 13.0 for the majority of the run. And everything is looking really good. We got 28 degrees of ignition timing in it. We might throw it on the dyno when we get back, just to kind of see what kind of numbers it's laying down, and we'll play with the ignition back and forth, maybe, depending on if the stuff is dry at the dyno or not. And we can kind of see if we can pull some more out of it or not. But yeah, so we're just going to do a couple runs here. Honda stuff and stuff falling off of the dash.
Little rub.
But she runs pretty good, man.
Sweet.
It feels strong.
Good to hear. Yeah, this is my air freshener.
Oh. Yeah, we got it cruising around 15.5 air fuel. Just kind of cruising down the country road here, 55 miles an hour. Yeah, you need to put this in an EF or something.
Really want to hatch.
Integras are nice cars, but they're
a little heavy.
They're like a boat. They're the boat of the Honda world.
Definitely. Well, Prelude's like the Challenger of the Honda world.
Definitely is.
Fucking blast in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
Better, it's just a hell of a lot faster, which is, it's probably not, but I mean, like, it's good.
Might have picked up a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
You never know. Alrighty guys, so we got the Integra strapped on the dyno now, and we're gonna try out the bed liner on the rollers and see how this thing works out. We just got the RPM synced with the dyno. We've been having some issues on some cars where we set the gear ratio, which will match engine RPM to roller speed, and some of the cars the tach doesn't read right, so the numbers don't read right. And yeah, so we're trying to get that dialed in on this car, and at $3,000 it's exactly $3,000 in the car, and at $5,000 it's exactly $5,000 in the car. So I'm hoping it'll be okay. We're just going to do a run, kind of see where we're sitting, and go from there, I suppose. So we already have driven the car quite a bit on the dyno, and it looks like the bed liner stuff is holding in there. It is kind of flattening out a little bit. It's not like peeling up or anything, but it is kind of flattening out the grit a little bit.
Which isn't the worst thing.
Which isn't the worst thing that can happen. So hopefully it'll hold on here, and see up here, it's losing load or something. So this is what I mean, that we've been having issues with the dyno. We're gonna try to sort it out here, but it like has load and then it loses load, and it doesn't, yeah. We're gonna have to play with it a little bit. Sometimes the belts need to warm up and whatnot, so we're gonna play with it till we get the right setup going here. Alright guys, so we got the Integra on the dyno and we've been playing around with some of the dyno settings trying to get this thing to lay a proper power curve. And let me just tell you guys, we've been having problems with the dyno for a while since we switched it to the Flywheel. We thought we had it figured out, but now after talking to a bunch of other tuning guys like Jason Waters and a lot of people with dyno jets, the torque on the dyno just doesn't match the horsepower like it should. Now normally when you have like, so this is one of the power runs that we did on the Integra here. So the torque should technically, like on a lot of Hondas, they'll just kind of flatline like this and the horsepower will go straight up until it hits peak power and then it'll kind of dive off. The way that all the curves have looked on a lot of all-motor Hondas on this dyno setup, the torque and horsepower are like right next to each other and it's just not how it should be. And the power also is like dying off real hard up here where it shouldn't be, and etc, etc. We had one setting on the dyno where it laid a proper curve, but it did not actually record the right number. We made 1,086 horsepower with an all-motor B-Series car. It must be a new record. This is how the curve should look. Granted, the resolution isn't there because it thinks it made 1,000 horsepower, but this is what I'm talking about with how the curve should look. And it looks exactly how it should. So we did this run with the setting on the dyno telling it had a load cell, and it did this. But every time we set the dyno up as an inertia dyno, it doesn't plot a good curve. So it's just really frustrating trying to get this to work. Alrighty guys, so we are continuing to work on the dyno. Reese left with his car. Everything is good to go with his car. He's pretty happy with the kind of how the car is acting now. It's good and tuned up. Everything is happy-go-lucky on the Integra. So we are continuing to work on the dyno like I was saying, and I have the roller RPM stuff pulled up here because this dyno has an RPM input right here. So we have RPM signal 1, which is the sensor that goes down off of the box and it runs down into the pit down there, and it picks up on the cam gear that I set up with a crank sensor or a Hall effect sensor. So I just put a cam gear on the other roller and it has 38 teeth on it. So I put 38 here, 38 pulses per 1 revolution of the roller, and I got that set up. So I went over, and beforehand we had the RPM signal coming off of this roller here. So this roller is an idler. It is not loaded. As you can see, it spins very easily. No load on that roller. So I put a cam gear on this roller, and then I had a bracket with the sensor, you know, pointing at the cam gear here. And that's how the dyno picked up RPM in mile per hour. So I had it on that roller, and I didn't have it on the loaded roller. And the only other thing I can kind of maybe think of is the roller speed isn't matching when the car is under a lot of power at like high speed. Maybe one roller is spinning different than another roller. So I'm just trying this. I have no idea honestly where to go with this thing. So I got another single cam, like a D16 cam gear. And this roller is actually threaded on the inside of it. So I just ran a bolt and I bolted this thing down and shimmied it until it was centered. And then I made another bracket here just out of some flat stock we had laying around, and kind of just calculated everything for this roller. I can barely even spin this one, but so this is now synced up here. It's very close to the Hall effect sensor. I usually use like a piece of paper or something in between the Hall effect sensor and the you know, the gear that it needs to pick up on. This is just a magnet is all it is. So when it feels the metal get closer, it pulses, and that's how it knows how many teeth are in 1 revolution, and then it does the math and everything's happy. So like I was saying, I probably might get another speed sensor because the Your Dyno box actually has an input for 2 speed sensors. So I would like to maybe do a second speed sensor on this thing. I just don't know where I can get one of these sensors. It's a 3-wire Hall effect sensor. I don't know if I can just use like a crank sensor off of something else, like a fucking LS or something. Might be able to, but anyways, I would like to get a signal from here and here and see if the roller speeds vary at all between each roller. I think that would be a cool little experiment to do because, like I said, I don't know if you know, the loaded roller isn't spinning as fast or something, you know, at high RPM it kind of comes up on the unloaded roller maybe a little bit, or it comes on the unloaded roller a little bit. I have no idea. Honestly, like, I'm lost. I just feel like every goddamn car that comes on the dyno lays this curve. Whenever we get like a decent run out of the car, it lays this curve right here. Like the CRX laid this curve a bunch. So did this GSR Integra. It did this same curve where it'll come up. Like, this doesn't look half bad, but like the torque is just not flat enough for how it should be, I don't think. I feel like the torque should be a little flatter here. I'm not 100% sure here, but the horsepower and torque up here literally fall between, let's say, like 7,250 RPM right here to 8,200. So within this 1,000 RPM window right here, it drops like, according to the dyno, it drops, let's see, it's 166 horsepower right here, and at 8,000 it's 131. So you guys do the math, 166, that's like 30 horsepower. If you lost 30 horsepower between 7,000 and 8,000 RPM, you would feel that. Like, that's a pretty big, substantial thing. And I know that the cars are not losing 30 horsepower from 7,000 to 8,000 RPM. I think maybe when the cars get up towards that top end there, something's happening with the roller speed or something where it's kind of skewing these results a little bit. At least that's what I'm thinking. I have no idea. You can see it really big here. This is the results versus time. So this is just the time of the run. So at 2 seconds into the run, we're you know, nice and flat here. And at, you know, 7 seconds of the run, between 6 and 7 seconds here, we're dropping a shitload of power. It's a substantial amount right there, just kind of falling off. So something with the dyno's got to be acting up, and I just don't know what it is. Like I showed you guys earlier, the pole that made 1,000 horsepower, it didn't actually make that. But the curve looked, you know, how it should have. Like this. Like I'm saying, this is kind of what we're looking for a power, you know, graph. With most Hondas, they're going to have like a pretty flat torque curve. It might bump up a smidge at VTEC and then kind of keep flat there. And then for horsepower, it should literally just draw like a 45-degree angle. So that's kind of what we're looking for, like I said. And I'm going to see, I might throw my CRX on quick just to kind of see if it plots a little bit different curve or not. And if it does, then maybe the roller RPM was an issue. I'm not sure. But I'm going to give it a shot quick before we end the video. And yeah, I'm fucking beat. We've been busting our ass out here lately. And yeah. Mint! Alrighty guys, so we got the CRX strapped on now onto the dyno. And good news is the Herculiner seems to be holding up pretty well so far. We haven't had any cars actually burn the tires on the roller or like attempt to spin. But a lot of times on the rollers when they were cold, like when the tires weren't warmed up at all, on the rollers beforehand with the CRX, if I would like punch it really hard in second or punch it really hard in third, it would spin one of the rollers faster than the other. Like you could feel the cars come up and spin on the roller. But now it doesn't spin at all, even on a bone cold setup. Like, just strapped it down and punched it, and it did not have any slipping issues on the roller. So I think the Herculiner did fix that quite a bit. But this is the CRX's power curve. So let's compare. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. This is a totally different setup than that GSR that we did. And this is a pull. The brown one is a pull with VTEC, and this one is a pull without VTEC, the green one there. So let's just compare one of my runs with the VTEC hooked up, and then one of the other guys' runs here with that GSR. All right, so this is the CRX's power curve. As you guys can see, again, it's tapering off a lot up top. You know, don't mind like the dip and shit here. That's probably something to do with the tune, or I don't know exactly what the dip is on this setup. But this is what we're kind of focusing on here. This is the like top of the RPM. So let's see here, results versus RPM. This was 8,000. The dyno also seems to be having an issue with syncing. It depends on the tire size on the car, where I can't get the RPM to sync perfectly. So this is 174 horsepower at this like top of this peak right here, and then down here 146 horsepower. 174, 146. 30 horsepower difference between 1,000 RPM window. That's actually less than 1,000 RPM of a window according to the dyno. And then we go to Reese's car, which did the same exact thing. This one made 148 at its little peak right here, and then up here we made 118. 30 horsepower. It's like consistently losing 30 horsepower on every car I put on above, like, say 7,000 RPM, or like, you know, a certain speed of the dyno. I don't know what it is. This is just like a really weird issue where something is going on with the dyno and I don't know what it is. So like I said, good thing though is we got the rollers biting good now, but I think it might have to do something with the flywheel where, like, at a certain speed it loses bite, or it loses load, or it gains load. I feel like because for it to drop power on the dyno graph, the dyno needs to be gaining load. If it was losing load, the car would make more power up top, if that makes sense. Like if it, like say between this top window here where it's losing 30 horsepower, if it was losing load, like say if the belts were slipping or something like that, it would actually do the opposite. It would actually gain a bunch of power here instead of lose it. Hopefully that makes sense. But since it's gaining load, it's actually going to spin the roller slower, and it's going to lose power if it's spinning the roller slower, which means the car's gaining load. Hopefully that all makes sense. So I don't know what the culprit is here, or what is going on with the load, or what have you. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. I'm kind of lost. I don't know what to do. I would like to make this thing work with the flywheel because it does seem like it loads the cars very well, but it's not doing very well when you know, it's not, when shit's just not working right. It's just not working right. Alrighty guys, so my theory was correct here. So what I did on the dyno just now is I actually disconnected the flywheel. Just for the time being, I just took the belts off and the belt drive on the loaded roller there. I just disconnected it completely, so we are just spinning the drums. We are just spinning the drums on the dyno. There is nothing adding any load. We are just pushing on the rollers of the dyno here. And I actually had a friend out in the UK or something. He's on the other side of the world, has the same exact dyno, and he tunes cars like, just like, you know, little cars, under 200 horsepower stuff mainly. And he literally uses his dyno just like this with no load at all, because he doesn't really need to on a lot of the really low power stuff that he deals with. Yeah, so that's the downfall of not running the flywheel or any load system at all on the dyno. It's not loaded, so we can't build boost with turbo cars. And the RPM just flies up when you do a pull. Like I did a 4th gear pull and it was just a super quick pull. Like it's just not loaded how it should be. So I feel like the tune is going to be different versus when it's not loaded at all, etc. But it lays a good curve with the flywheel off. Like the power curve is exactly what it should be. Like fucking CRX makes jam. Look at this. Duplicated the same exact run both times. The torque curve was flat, just how it should have been. Like literally, this is how it should look, guys. The torque is completely flat here. And the horsepower drew a 45-degree angle. Or not a 45, but like, you know what I mean, like a 30-degree or whatever. Just kind of came up and bop, and sent it all the way to the moon, and just barely kind of starts trickling off way up top here. This is like 8,500 RPM or so, where it kind of just starts to taper off. That's exactly what it should do. CRX makes 216 horsepower, 214 horsepower, 130 foot-pounds of torque. The numbers are a little bit high here because it thinks that it's revving 10,000 RPM, which it's really only revving, you know, 82 or 85. So the number's probably not that far off, but it is a little bit off because the tack on the dyno wasn't synced here. But like I said, all we're kind of looking for right now is a curve that draws the picture that I'm looking for. And this is drawing the picture that I'm looking for. So, boom. It's right there. You know, this is fucking proof in the pudding right here. And this is 2 runs overlaid over each other. Like, you literally can't even tell. This is like, the little bit of difference here is, you know, whatever. But like, they literally draw right on top of each other. The curve draws right on top of one another. You can see it. Like it literally is consistent. So yeah, the flywheel's causing issues, but I don't know. I would like to make it work because I don't know how else I'm going to load cars on the damn dyno. But yeah, so there's that conclusion. We'll compare the two. I didn't do any other changes to the car. So the power curve literally should look the exact same, whether I, did anything to the dyno. I took the flywheel off, that's all I did, and it laid the proper power curve that it should have laid. So like I said, that's that curve, and then if we pull up the curve from before, this is one of the runs with the CRX before, when the flywheel was still attached. So we'll look at that, and you can see here that we got like random dip here that loses like 40 horsepower or something crazy. Let's see here, that was 157, and it's down to 140, so it lost 20 horsepower right here, which is not likely on an all-motor car to lose 20 horsepower like in the middle of the mid-range here. And literally, I've been driving myself nuts with the CRX this whole damn time because the dyno's been acting weird. And I went through the whole cylinder head, and I went through the fucking exhaust, and I went through the cylinder head a bunch. And I literally did everything to the CRX because I thought the CRX's motor was bad or something was wrong with it, when all it was is something with the damn dyno here. So that's just what it is. And then as you see here up top, it's just freaking falling like a freight train. Like it's just diving down like crazy. So that's no good. We got to figure something out. I don't know what it is or what it's going to be to figure it out, but we definitely got to figure something out, like I was saying. So I don't know. We'll see what I come up with, what I can brainstorm, and all that. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video here. We had some fun today. And did a lot of learning. So anyways, yeah, we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night and a better tomorrow, and we'll see you in the next one.